Go find another table. This one's for family, not adopted girls. Her voice was crisp, practiced, and loud enough to echo across the chandeliered dining room. Victoria always knew how to perform cruelty in public, to sharpen her words until they split me open in front of strangers. Belmont's wasn't just any restaurant, it was one of Seattle's crown jewels. The kind of place where waiters glided silently like shadows, and a bottle of wine could cost half my rent. People came here to celebrate, to savor life. My family had brought me here to remind me I didn't belong. The laughter came in waves. My parents, my brother Kenneth, even Victoria's husband, they chuckled as if she'd made the cleverest joke in the world. My cheeks burned so hot I thought the crystal glasses on the table might shatter. All around us, other diners turned to look. I caught glimpses of disapproving stares, sympathetic glances, even someone whispering into a partner's ear. Their gazes felt like tiny needles, pricking at my already fragile dignity. My name is Rachel. I was 27 years old that night, and for 22 of those years I'd lived with this family since being adopted at 5. And for 22 years, I'd been reminded subtly, cruelly, relentlessly, that I wasn't one of them, that I was charity, that I was less. Victoria, that's enough, I managed, trying to keep my voice level. But inside, a storm was already brewing, the same storm I'd swallowed since childhood. Oh, don't be so sensitive, my mother Patricia cut in, her hand flicking the air like she was brushing away a fly. You know how Victoria is, always teasing. Teasing, that was her favorite excuse. Teasing when Victoria got the master bedroom while I slept in the drafty one near the attic. Teasing when Kenneth shoved me into the pool and everyone laughed instead of helping. Teasing when Patricia forgot my birthday 3 years in a row, then scolded me for being ungrateful when I cried. At 32, Victoria had perfected the art of cruelty dressed up as family banter. She got the newest clothes, the private education, the praise for mediocrity. I got leftovers, student loans, and criticism when I dared to excel. Sit down, Rachel, my father, Gregory, ordered, his voice flat and sharp as a blade. You're making a scene. Saturday. Saturday. My throat ached with unsaid words, but silence was the price of surviving in this family. The dinner stretched on in a haze of exclusion, Victoria bragging about her latest real estate investment, Kenneth detailing his bank promotion, my parents leaning forward with pride. When I tried to mention a $50,000 contract I'd just secured for my graphic design business, Patricia's lips curved in polite dismissal. That's nice, dear, she said, already turning back to Kenneth. Now tell us more about your bonus. I shrank back into myself, the familiar numbness creeping in. I had learned young that in this family, my achievements weren't achievements, they were inconveniences. Then dessert came, and with it, the waiter, holding a slim black folder. I expected it to be set in front of Gregory, or perhaps Victoria's husband. Instead, it landed directly in front of me. My stomach dropped. What's this? I asked. Victoria's laugh rang bright and cruel. Didn't we mention? You're paying tonight. Consider it your contribution, since you're always taking and never giving. Taking? My voice cracked. I've never asked you for anything. Patricia tilted her head, counting off on manicured fingers. The roof over your head growing up. Food, clothes, everything. We gave you all of that. The least you can do, her tone implied, is pay nearly $3,000 to prove your gratitude. With trembling fingers, I opened the folder. The number stared back at me, sharp and merciless. $3,270. My vision blurred. They had ordered the most extravagant dishes, the finest wines, lobster tails, premium steaks, even multiple desserts just for show. Kenneth smirked across the table, licking powdered sugar from his fingers like a child who'd never been told no. I can't afford this, I whispered. Of course you can, Victoria purred. Didn't you say you landed a big client? $50,000, wasn't it? This is nothing to you now. But it wasn't nothing. That contract stretched across 6 months of grueling work, already divided between rent, student loan payments, and the endless costs of keeping my tiny business afloat. Paying this bill would bleed me dry. Yet I couldn't stand another round of, "You're dramatic, you're ungrateful, you're lucky we even keep you." So I smiled a broken smile, pulled out my credit card, and handed it to the waiter. The leather folder closed with a snap that felt like the sound of a trap sealing shut. As they went back to chatting about Tuscany vacations I would never be invited to, I sat there in silence, a guest in my own life, paying for the privilege of being humiliated. But then, just as I was about to stand and walk out, the room shifted. A voice, strong and clear despite its age, cut through the clinking of glasses. "Just a moment, please." The restaurant went still. It was Grandma Dorothy. "Sit down, all of you." Her voice wasn't raised, but it carried more weight than anything I'd ever heard from my so-called parents. Even the chandeliers seemed to hum with silence. Waiters froze in place. Diners leaned forward, pretending not to eavesdrop, but their curiosity was palpable. At 78, Grandma Dorothy still carried herself with the poise of a queen. Her silver hair was perfectly coiffed, her posture straight as a blade, her pearl earrings glinting softly under the warm lights. But it was her eyes, sharp, assessing, disappointed, that made my breath catch. Patricia attempted a weak smile. "Mother, really, this isn't the time. We were just about to leave." "Be quiet." Dorothy's reply was so cold, so final, that Patricia snapped her mouth shut like a chastised child. Even Gregory sat straighter, his fork slipping from his hand. For as long as I'd been in this family, Dorothy had been different. She came to my school plays when my parents couldn't be bothered. She asked me questions about my art, remembered my birthday, sent handwritten notes with pressed lilacs tucked inside. To them, I was an obligation. To her, I'd always been Rachel. "I've been watching this family for years," Dorothy began, her gaze sweeping the table like a searchlight. "Watching how you treat Rachel. Watching how you've always treated her." Victoria rolled her eyes, already bristling. "Oh, come on, it was a joke." Dorothy's laugh was sharp, bitter. "A joke? You call cruelty a joke? You think humiliating a young woman in public, making her pay thousands of dollars for your gluttony, is fun?" The words hung heavy in the air. My heart pounded so hard I was sure the entire restaurant could hear it. For once, the roles had flipped. Victoria squirmed under scrutiny, and I sat frozen, unsure if this was real. "I've spent the past few months thinking about my legacy," Dorothy continued, sliding a sealed envelope from her purse. "And I've decided I will not allow it to fall into unworthy hands." The color drained from Victoria's face. Kenneth looked up from his phone for the first time all night, his jaw tightening. My parents exchanged frantic glances. "We all know how this usually works," Dorothy said, her tone almost conversational. "The bulk of my estate to Patricia, then divided among the grandchildren. That's what the old will says." Victoria's lips curved in a greedy smile. She'd been counting on it for years, spending money she didn't have, bragging about inheritances as if they were guaranteed. "But," Dorothy's voice cut like glass, "I've had my lawyer draw up a new will, signed and notarized yesterday." She tapped the envelope lightly. "Everything, every dollar, every property, every investment goes to Rachel." The silence that followed was explosive in its own way. I could feel the weight of the restaurant watching, the disbelief pressing in like a wave. "You can't be serious," Kenneth blurted, his polished banker composure cracking. "Because of one dinner? This is ridiculous." "Ridiculous?" Dorothy's eyes narrowed. "I've watched for 2 decades as you mocked, excluded, and belittled her. Tonight was simply the final straw." "This is insane," Patricia stammered. "Mother, you can't just—" "I can, and I have," Dorothy interrupted. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder then, a simple gesture that made my throat tighten. "Rachel is the only one at this table who has shown true character. She built a business from nothing, with no help from any of you. She has integrity, kindness, and resilience, despite everything you tried to do to her." Gregory cleared his throat, attempting authority. "Mother, you're being dramatic. This is a family matter. We'll sort it out privately." Dorothy's eyebrows arched. "When was the last time you asked Rachel about her life, Gregory? Really asked, without dismissing her? When was the last time you congratulated her, Kenneth? When was the last time you treated her as family, Victoria?" They had no answers. "You've all failed spectacularly," Dorothy declared, her voice ringing through the dining room. "And I will not reward failure with fortune." The table seemed to shrink under the weight of her condemnation. Other diners had stopped eating altogether, their forks suspended mid-air. The staff hovered by the doors, sensing the electricity of a moment that would be remembered. "You're changing your will because of her?" Victoria's voice was shrill now, her face blotchy with fury. "She's not even really family." Dorothy's reply was calm, deliberate. "Rachel is more family than any of you have ever been." And in that instant, for the first time in my life, I felt the ground shift beneath me. For 22 years, I'd been the outsider, the forgotten one, the afterthought. But here, under the glittering chandeliers of Belmont's, with the city of Seattle stretching beyond the glass, my grandmother had just rewritten the story. Not just her will, my future. The restaurant had gone silent as Dorothy's words landed, but the explosion came as soon as we stepped outside. My family's voices rose behind us, furious, panicked, disbelieving, yet Dorothy didn't turn back once. Her hand remained steady on my arm, as Thomas, her driver of 3 decades, opened the sleek black sedan waiting at the curb. "Miss Rachel," Thomas said with a small, respectful nod. "Welcome." It felt strange, being acknowledged with such dignity after an evening of degradation. I slid into the back seat, the soft leather swallowing me, while the cold night air carried the muffled sound of my sister's shrieks from the restaurant doorway. Inside the car, silence enveloped us, broken only by the soft hum of the engine. Seattle's rain-slick streets glistened with reflections of neon and headlights as we pulled away. I pressed my palms together to keep them from trembling. "I don't understand," I finally whispered. My voice felt too small for the luxury of the car. "You're really leaving everything to me?" Dorothy's profile was sharp against the passing city lights. She turned, her expression softening. "Yes, Rachel. You've earned it." "I haven't earned billions of dollars," I said, my throat tight. "I haven't done anything." "You've survived," she interrupted gently. "You've worked hard, built something from nothing. You've been kind when cruelty surrounded you. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Her words warmed me, but fear crept in just as quickly. "They'll fight you. Victoria, Kenneth, my parents, they won't let this go." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Let them try. I've had this in motion for months. My attorneys have every document prepared, notarized, filed. Medical evaluations confirm I'm of sound mind. They can scream, but they cannot undo what's already been secured." For the first time that night, I exhaled fully. Yet a heaviness lingered, and I realized it wasn't fear of my family, it was something deeper. I glanced at her, the woman who had just turned my life upside down with a few sentences. Her hand, resting calmly on her lap, looked thinner than I remembered, the skin delicate, almost translucent under the glow of passing streetlights. "Why now?" I asked quietly. Dorothy didn't answer immediately. The car turned onto the expressway, Seattle's skyline glittering behind us like a crown of steel and glass. Finally, she sighed, the sound carrying the weight of decades. "Because, sweetheart," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard, "I don't have much time left." The words cut through me like ice. "What do you mean?" "I'm dying, Rachel. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months, perhaps less." The city blurred outside the window as tears welled in my eyes. I shook my head, unable to process. Dorothy, sharp, unbreakable, untouchable, Dorothy was dying. "You can't. No. You're strong. You'll fight." She placed her hand over mine, her grip surprisingly firm despite her frailty. "I've fought battles all my life. This one, I won't win. And that's all right. I've made my peace." The words settled in my chest like stones. My grandmother, the only person who'd ever truly loved me without condition, was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. "But why give me everything?" My voice cracked. "Why not divide it, keep the peace?" Her eyes, clear and unwavering, met mine. "Because peace built on injustice isn't peace, it's silence. I won't reward cruelty. I won't leave my life's work to people who used my granddaughter as their punching bag. My fortune should go to someone who knows its value, who knows what suffering feels like, and who won't squander it. That someone is you." Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot and relentless. I pressed my forehead against the cool window glass, watching the raindrops race downward. For once, I didn't try to stop the crying. Dorothy's thumb brushed across the back of my hand. Don't see this as a burden, Rachel. See it as justice. For you. For every child who's ever been told they weren't enough. As the car glided through the night, I realized she wasn't just rewriting her will. She was rewriting my story. And in that quiet, rain-soaked ride, I understood something. I was no longer just the adopted girl at the edge of the table. I was the heir to Dorothy's empire and her final mission. Dorothy's mansion loomed over Lake Washington like something out of another world. 3 acres of manicured lawns, glass walls reflecting the water, the scent of cedar trees drifting in the damp night air. I'd been here a handful of times over the years, but it always felt like stepping into a place I wasn't supposed to belong. Tonight, it was different. Tonight, Dorothy had brought me home. The next morning, I found her in the study mahogany bookshelves, soft golden light spilling through tall windows, papers neatly stacked on the desk. Walter, her attorney, stood beside her, a leather portfolio in his hands. Rachel, Dorothy said gently, there's something you need to see. My stomach tightened. Her tone carried that weight, the kind that makes you brace for impact. Walter slid a folder toward me. Inside were bank records, transfer statements, official documents stamped with dates going back 22 years. At first, I couldn't make sense of the numbers. Then I saw the total, $750,000. What is this? My voice sounded strange, distant. Dorothy's expression softened with sorrow. When your birth parents died, Rachel, they left a trust. Money to ensure you'd be cared for, educated, supported. Patricia and Gregory were approved as your adoptive parents, and with that approval, they were given access to those funds. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk, my hands trembling. You mean, they had money for me? All those years they said they couldn't afford? Yes. Dorothy's eyes didn't waver. Vacations, cars, private schooling for Victoria and Kenneth, designer clothes, a new car for your brother's 16th birthday. They spent what was meant for you on everyone but you. Images flashed through my mind like shards of glass. Patricia insisting I should be grateful for hand-me-downs. Kenneth mocking my second-hand shoes. Victoria parading her new wardrobe while I worked shifts at the library to cover community college. They stole from me, I whispered. From a child. Walter nodded. We've traced every withdrawal. With interest, the total now comes to roughly $2.3 million. We've already filed a civil suit against them. They'll be forced to answer for this. My throat burned. For years I'd wondered if I was imagining it, if maybe I was just oversensitive, if maybe I really was ungrateful like they said. But here it was, in black and white proof that they hadn't just been cruel, they'd been criminals. My phone buzzed suddenly, the name, Dad, flashing across the screen. My instinct was to decline, but Dorothy's voice was firm. Answer it, put it on speaker. With shaking hands, I did. Rachel, Gregory's voice spilled out, too smooth, too urgent. We need to talk. Your grandmother isn't thinking clearly. Don't do this. She seems perfectly clear to me, I said, my voice trembling but stronger than I expected. This is insane, he snapped. You've been with us for 22 years, and suddenly you turn on us the moment money is involved? I laughed bitterly, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. The moment money is involved? You mean like the $750,000 you took from my trust? Money meant for me? Money you spent on vacations and private schools while I wore secondhand clothes and took out loans? Silence, a crackle on the line, then Patricia's voice, high and frantic. That money was for raising you. Housing, food, clothes. Raising a child is expensive. You gave me leftovers, I shot back. You gave me student debt while Kenneth got a fully funded education. You gave Victoria luxury while I paid for my own books working nights. Don't you dare tell me that money was used for me. You're being ungrateful, Gregory said, his voice tight with anger. We gave you a home. You gave me a prison, I said. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, and once spoken, they felt like truth carved into stone. On the other end, Patricia's voice turned shrill. We'll fight this. You'll never win. Dorothy leaned closer, her voice sharp as a blade. Please do. I'd love to see you explain to a judge how you stole from a grieving 5-year-old and called it parenting." The line went dead. I sat there, my heart racing, staring at the silent phone. For 22 years I'd lived under the weight of their narrative. The ungrateful adoptee, the outsider who should be thankful. But the truth was out now, undeniable. They hadn't saved me, they had sold me. It didn't take long for the secret to leak. Barely 3 days after that dinner at Belmont's, headlines began to appear on my phone. Billionaire disinherits family leaves fortune to adopted granddaughter. Air drama in Seattle, Dorothy Hayes cuts out own daughter. By noon, reporters were camped outside the gates of Dorothy's estate. News vans lined the street. Camera lenses glinted like watchful eyes every time I passed a window. Inside, my phone buzzed without mercy calls, texts, emails. Some people congratulated me. Others called me a manipulative gold digger who had seduced an old woman for her fortune. One comment that stuck with me read, "She must have been grooming Dorothy for years. Classic gold digger move." The cruelty wasn't new, but now it was louder. At breakfast, I pushed my plate away untouched. Dorothy sat across from me, a silk scarf tied around her thinning hair, her gaze unwavering. "Stop reading those comments," she said gently. "They're calling me terrible things," I muttered. "They think I manipulated you." "They called me terrible things too, Rachel," Dorothy said with a half smile. "When I built my first company, I was too aggressive, too ambitious, too much of a woman in a man's industry. Do you know what I did?" I looked up, silent. "I proved them wrong, that's all you need to do." But outside our walls, the family was fighting back in their own ways. Victoria became unhinged almost overnight. She filled her social media with rambling videos, accusing me of witchcraft, manipulation, brainwashing. She even posted a screenshot of her Tuscany vacation deposit, raging that I stole her dreams. Her rants spread like wildfire, dissected by gossip blogs and gleeful commentators. Kenneth tried to play the opposite role, the calm, reasonable one. He sat for an interview on local TV, speaking with measured tones. "Look, maybe mistakes were made," he said, eyes heavy with false sincerity. "But cutting us out completely? That's extreme. Family disagreements shouldn't end in disinheritance." The interviewer's expression hardened. "Mr. Hayes, records show your parents received $750,000 intended for Rachel's care. That money paid for your education and your sister's luxuries, while Rachel took loans for community college. How exactly is that a disagreement, rather than exploitation?" Kenneth's composure cracked, just slightly. He stammered, pivoted, ended the interview early, but the clip went viral. My parents tried their own strategy. Gregory gave a tearful statement outside their gated community, claiming he loved me like a daughter. "We weren't perfect parents, but who is?" he said, voice trembling. This is destroying our family. We should be healing, not fighting." Patricia's approach was more polished. She hired a PR firm, sat in front of soft lighting, minimal makeup, and told a carefully rehearsed story to a sympathetic journalist. She dabbed her eyes at all the right moments. "I loved Rachel from the moment we brought her home," she said. "Yes, we were strict. Yes, maybe we were harder on her than on our biological children. But it was only because we wanted her strong. We wanted her ready for the world." The journalist leaned in. "And the trust fund money?" "That money raised her," Patricia replied smoothly. "Food, housing, education. Raising a child is expensive. We didn't keep receipts, we were a family, not a business." She turned directly to the camera. "Rachel, if you're watching this, please, let's talk. Mother to daughter, without lawyers, without the media." I watched the interview from Dorothy's study. The performance was almost convincing. Almost. "She's good, Walter," the attorney admitted reluctantly. "This makes them look sympathetic for the first time." "She's a liar," I whispered. "She never loved me. She loved what I cost her. She loved the power of making me small." Dorothy's hand covered mine. Her skin was fragile, paper thin, but her grip steady. "Some people will believe her, Rachel. But the people who matter, the courts, the truth, me, they already know." And yet, I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. It wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about survival in court, in the media, in my own heart. I looked out the window at the flashing cameras beyond the gate. For years, my family had tried to bury me in silence. Now, the whole world was watching. The morning of the hearing, Seattle felt gray and heavy, as if the sky itself understood what was about to unfold. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, microphones poised, cameras flashing at every shadow that might be me. Protesters held signs, some calling me a thief, others holding words like "Justice for Rachel." Walter had arranged for us to slip in through a private entrance. Still, the noise of the crowd bled through the stone walls as we stepped inside. Dorothy, finally agreeing to a wheelchair, sat straight-backed, her pearl earrings glinting. Even frail, she looked like steel. My family was already waiting at the defense table. Patricia wore a muted dress, her makeup soft, her expression carefully arranged into sorrow. Gregory looked weary, his hands clenched, eyes darting to the cameras. Kenneth avoided my gaze, but Victoria, her glare burned through me like fire. Every inch of her radiated fury, her mouth twitching like she could barely keep from screaming. The judge entered. Judge Morrison, a woman in her 60s with a sharp gaze that demanded silence. "This is a hearing regarding the contested will of Dorothy Hayes," she began. "I've reviewed extensive documentation from both parties. Counsel, proceed." The family's lawyer, a sleek man with a smile too smooth, rose first. He spoke of undue influence, of a vulnerable, ill woman manipulated by an opportunistic adoptee. His words dripped like oil, painting me as a predator. Then Walter stood. He didn't posture or embellish. He simply laid out the truth like a blade across velvet. Bank records showing the $750,000 stolen from my trust. Medical evaluations from 3 separate doctors attesting to Dorothy's sharp mind. Letters, emails, witness statements documenting 2 decades of cruelty and exclusion. And finally, the viral footage of Victoria's public meltdown, her shrieking confession that the money was ours, we earned it by raising her ungrateful ass. The courtroom screens glowed with her rage, every syllable echoing through the chamber. I watched as the jurors' faces shifted, as even the judge's eyes hardened. "Your Honor," Walter said calmly, "this is not a case of undue influence. It is a case of a woman finally protecting the one person in this family who has shown integrity. The rest are simply angry that their victim has slipped from their grasp." The family's lawyer tried to object, to reframe, but Judge Morrison lifted a hand. "I've heard enough." The room stilled. "This court finds that the evidence is overwhelming," she declared. Dorothy Hayes was of sound mind when she executed her new will. The documented abuse and financial exploitation of Rachel Hayes is extensive and credible. The contesting party's own admissions further confirm this exploitation. Therefore, the will stands as executed. I couldn't breathe. Additionally, the judge continued, her voice sharp as a gavel strike, Patricia and Gregory Hayes are ordered to repay the misappropriated trust funds with accrued interest, totaling approximately $2.3 million. Payment in full is due within 90 days. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Patricia slumped forward, sobbing into her hands. Gregory's face drained of color. Kenneth buried his face in his palms. And Victoria, she erupted. "This is outrageous!" she screamed, leaping to her feet. "You can't just—" "Sit down," Judge Morrison barked, "or I will hold you in contempt." Victoria's mouth twisted as she collapsed back into her chair, her fury practically shaking the walls. The gavel came down. "This matter is settled. Court adjourned." For a long moment, I couldn't move. The weight of 22 years pressed against me, and then, like glass shattering, it lifted. Dorothy's hand found mine, fragile but steady. "It's done, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're free." Outside, the media swarmed us again, shouting questions. "How do you feel? What will you do with the fortune? Do you have a message for your family?" But I didn't answer. I just helped Dorothy into the car, the noise fading behind us. For the first time in my life, I felt something I had never felt before. Not gratitude, not fear, not even relief. I felt free. The weeks after the courtroom battle were strangely quiet. My phone still buzzed with reporters, my name still swirled online, but inside Dorothy's estate, time slowed. The mansion, once a fortress against the world, became something else. A sanctuary, a place where I could finally exhale. Dorothy, though, was fading. Her strength, which had carried her through the courtroom like a general leading troops, now waned with each passing day. Some mornings she rose with a spark in her eyes, dictating letters to Walter, asking about the companies, urging me to sit beside her as she explained investment strategies. Other mornings, she barely stirred from her bed, her skin pale, her voice faint. I stayed by her side through it all. At night, when the house grew silent and the lake outside shimmered beneath the moon, I would sit in her room, reading aloud from books she loved. Sometimes she listened. Sometimes she drifted into half-sleep, murmuring memories from her youth, how she'd worked the pharmacy counter as a teenager, how men twice her age tried to undermine her when she built her company, how she'd fought, always fought, until she didn't have to anymore. One evening, as I was brushing her silver hair back from her forehead, she whispered, "You know, Rachel, I always prayed Patricia would learn compassion, that my grandchildren would learn kindness. Instead, you, my granddaughter by choice, not by blood, were the one who carried those things. That's why it's all yours now." Tears slid silently down my cheeks. I wanted to tell her I wasn't strong enough, that I didn't know how to run an empire, that I was terrified. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw the certainty there, unshakable even as her body weakened. She believed in me, and that belief became the anchor I clung to. As the days blurred, I began to plan. I told her about my idea for a foundation in her name, one dedicated to helping adopted children who faced what I had: children trapped in homes where love was conditional, where money meant for them was stolen, where survival was the only lesson they learned. Her lips curved into a weak but radiant smile. "That's perfect," she murmured. "Help them break the cycle. That will be our true legacy." On a Tuesday morning, the sun poured through her windows, painting her room in gold. I sat beside her, holding her hand, feeling how fragile it had become. Her breaths were shallow, her eyes half closed, but when she turned to me, clarity flickered back for one last time. "Rachel," she whispered, "thank you for being my real family." Her fingers squeezed mine once, twice. Then her hand went still. The world seemed to tilt. I clung to her hand long after her chest stilled, as if my grip could hold her here. Thomas entered quietly, his eyes wet, Walter not far behind, but I barely registered them. The woman who had saved me, who had believed me, who had rewritten my life, was gone. The funeral was small and private. Just me, Thomas, Walter, and a handful of Dorothy's oldest friends from her business days. No Patricia, no Gregory, no Kenneth, no Victoria. They tried to come, of course. Patricia even showed up at the gates, weeping dramatically for the cameras, but security turned her away. She wasn't welcome. As we lowered Dorothy into the earth, I pressed a lilac sprig into the soil, a flower she always tucked into her letters to me. My heart ached, but in that ache was also a vow. I would honor her legacy, not by clinging to grief, but by building something beautiful out of the wreckage she had helped me escape. That night, alone in her vast house, I whispered into the silence, "I'll make you proud." And for the first time in my life, I believed I could. The weeks after Dorothy's funeral were a blur of signatures, meetings, and decisions that felt bigger than me. Walter and his team worked around the clock, finalizing the transfer of assets, structuring trusts, installing managers. The numbers were staggering: billions in liquid assets, sprawling real estate portfolios, global business stakes. It didn't feel real. I spent nights awake in her study, surrounded by ledgers and files, the scent of her lilac perfume still lingering faintly. Some days I wanted to run, to hand it all back. But then I'd remember her voice. "You survived. You earned this." And I'd force myself to lean in, to learn, to grow into the woman she already believed I was. The first thing I did was launch the Dorothy Hayes Foundation for Adopted Children, not as a vanity project, but as an act of survival turned outward. We hired lawyers to represent kids in abusive households. We funded emergency housing. We built scholarships. Within the first year, over 500 children found safety and new beginnings. Every success story stitched a wound inside me a little tighter. Meanwhile, my former family unraveled spectacularly. Patricia and Gregory couldn't pay the $2.3 million restitution. Their house went first, then their cars, then the country club membership they once flaunted. They ended up in a small apartment in a part of town Patricia used to sneer at. Eventually, fraud charges caught up with them. Gregory was sentenced to 3 years in prison, Patricia too. Kenneth, weighed down by his $400,000 repayment, lost his marriage and his job. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he bounced between low-paying work and debts he couldn't manage. His polished banker facade had cracked, and no one rushed to glue it back together. And Victoria, oh Victoria, her viral meltdown made her infamous. Her husband divorced her, taking what little stability she had left. Every business venture she touched collapsed, either under debt or ridicule. She tried to sell her story to publishers, but fact-checkers tore it apart. She even launched a YouTube channel, ranting about justice and betrayal, but the comments section destroyed her. Eventually, she vanished from the public eye, reduced to bitter posts from anonymous accounts. They'd all built their lives on entitlement, cruelty, and greed. And when that crumbled, there was nothing left beneath. 1 year after Dorothy's death, a business magazine profiled me not as the adopted girl who inherited billions, but as a CEO overseeing multiple companies and a growing foundation changing lives. For once, the story wasn't about my family's betrayal. It was about me. I still received messages from them, of course. Kenneth begging for help, Patricia pleading for forgiveness, Victoria spewing venom from burner phones. I blocked them all. But one day, I replied just once. Kenneth had written, "Mom and Dad are struggling. Can't you find it in your heart to help? They're still your parents." My answer was simple. They were never my parents. They were people who took money to raise me and spent it on themselves. I owe them nothing. But I will donate $750,000, the exact amount they stole from me, to the foundation, in their names. That will be their only legacy. And I sent it. Then I blocked his number forever. Now, when I walk through the foundation headquarters downtown, the walls lined with photographs of children who found safety, I feel something I never thought possible: peace. Not triumph, not revenge, but peace. I still think of Dorothy often. When the lilacs bloom, when I sign papers at her mahogany desk, when a child looks up at me with the same haunted eyes I once saw in the mirror. Her last words echo in me: "Thank you for being my real family." She was right. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up, who protects you, who believes in you even when you don't believe in yourself. I survived them. I built something from the ashes they left. And as I watched them collapse under the weight of their choices, I realize I never needed revenge. Justice, it turns out, takes care of itself.